7H is in the separate attachment.
In the donor
That's the
attachment?
one with the, did I do a separate attachment?
Yes,
Yes.
it was a hyperlink.
Okay.
Okay. Any community input this evening? All right. Moving on to 5A, looking to amend or approve the minutes from the August regular meeting.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you, Leslie. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Opposed?
It's a pause otherwise.
Motion carries. Moving on to 5B, amending or improving the minutes from the August special meeting.
I'll move to approve them.
Thank you.
I will second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to 5C, review and payment of available bills, and then can we add accepting financial reports to that?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Anything you'd like to point out to us today, Jennifer?
I don't have anything particular to emphasize. Does anybody have any questions about anything they see here? There's a number of down payments for contracts and things that you've approved at last time's meeting.
Any questions or concerns, comments? Okay, all in favor of review and payment of available bills and accepting financial reports?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. Moving on to 6A, Library Director's Report.
So we are still waiting on the final review on the CDS funding. We heard today that they're expecting to finish that soon, hopefully by the end of next week. So we are eager for that to happen. We are welcoming 2 new circulation assistants that you'll see if you visit the desk. Linda joined yesterday, and Andrea will be joining us next week. And then we are on the verge of filling our library page position, so that's very exciting. And just a big thumbs up to our staff who are working very hard, as we're four people short is not easy, especially Leisha, who's the supervisor for that department. She's been working lots of different hours than she normally would, and everybody's been jumping in to help out where needed, so a big thank you to our entire staff. We had a really good summer reading program that wrapped up in August. It was great participation by the community and just some really fun activities. Great to see the energy and excitement in the library. And those are the items that I wish to highlight today. Are there any questions? You also have a calendar of our September events in the packet under Director's Report. Monarch Festival was this past Saturday, and Kelly and Kara both went there. They did a story time and had a lot of community members interact with them while they were there.
Great. Looks like a full month of September programming.
Yeah, I should also point out that there's a Jacqueline Woodson live stream that's done as part of the Dane County Ripple Project on the October 3rd, it looks like. That should be a really interesting opportunity, so if you have any interest in that, I think it'll be available. I'm hoping it's available afterward if you can't. It's kind of at the lunch hour during the day because of the way that it was structured. So.
Great, thank you. Any village board announcements, Carlene?
Yeah, just a couple of things. The CIP and the ongoing strategic planning and such are continuing. The budget will be finalized in the next little while. And there was a very interesting discussion in the last 2 board meetings. I'm not part of it, but I'm watching on YouTube about what should be in the agenda as it pertains to reports from the village administrator and from village officers, and it was very interesting, and I'm sending my 2 cents worth in, well, I sent it in, about what I felt about it, and basically we ended up in a lot of the same position as we were before, except making sure that we're not taking any action on things that are not included in the packet ahead of time. It was very interesting because it felt like, holy cow, we're limiting the things that we're actually going to be able to talk about, and how is the public ever going to know about these things if we can't both talk about them? So I think we arrived at a good spot, and anybody who listened to the conversation, if you have any thoughts about that, I'd certainly appreciate you letting me know so I can share those.
Thank you, Carlene. Any school district announcements?
Just the school started. And that's been a lot of fun. Everything's been going really well so far. And seeing the kids come in the schools last week was just a blast. So everything's going well there. And as a matter of fact, I was just communicating with the principal. Friday night is youth sports night at the football game. So it will be a very busy place. All volunteers are welcome.
I went to the concession stand last year during that night. We set a record for sales at a
Really?
football game in one night. It was insane. So I will not be there.
I will be there. But not at the concession stand.
But that concludes the report.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to 7H, donor agreements for naming opportunities.
So that is actually page 40 in your packet. It looks like I forgot to put a bookmark in that, so it's the very last thing in the packet. We've talked about donor agreements previously. We have them for donors to the project that have pledges outstanding. They were originally developed to basically protect donors if the project didn't happen, to protect the library if people had future payments planned. But with our journey, there was kind of a time where we didn't know some of the details that made the agreement kind of not applicable at that moment. And then now that we're at a point where most of the donors have actually already fulfilled their commitment, and so it just changes things a little bit. So what I'm recommending, I have a kind of a template updated in here for those donors, so I would recommend that you just approve that standard donor agreement format and allow us to execute that agreement with any donors who have a naming opportunity and have already paid their donation, and just to use that on anybody without bringing that individual agreement back to this board for your approval, since it's the same agreement that would apply to all donors who've already fulfilled their gift commitment. That means that Laura would be allowed to sign anything for anybody in that category, and we would not be presenting those individually to you at a future meeting, if that's acceptable to you.
So this is like a post-nup agreement?
There's still things that, it doesn't change anything, so if somebody declines signing it at this point, I don't think we would push it. But it's also,
Post-nup.
it kind of just formalizes how long there's most of the provisions that were relevant are kind of already addressed, but it does specify the term of how long the donor wall and the naming signage will remain up, so that's good just for clarity. We have provided that in other ways. And then there's just a couple things that it's just good to have expectations clear, even though the policies would still apply even if somebody declined to sign it. So if they don't sign it, it's not necessarily an issue, but it's just good to have that clear communication.
And this is just, like, we're just standardizing it so that,
Same for everybody,
Okay.
yeah, so that it's
I like that.
consistent. John?
Now, is this just for the folks who are getting naming opportunities, or for all the donors that might be also listed on the donor wall?
Just those with naming opportunities,
Okay.
since that's kind of a special deal to make those expectations clear.
Sure.
Yeah.
Is there a motion to approve the standard donor agreement?
I can move that.
Thank you, John. Does that include authorizing the execution of the agreements?
You bet.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Sorry.
I can second that.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving the standard donor agreement and executing them?
Aye.
Opposed?
I
All right, motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Moving back up to 7A, resolution approving amendment to Dane County standards for public libraries.
So we talked about this earlier in the summer. Dane County is looking to amend their library standards, which applies to all public libraries in Dane County. But since it applies to all the libraries, to change the current standards, every library must review them. And they need a certain number of 50% of participating municipalities and 80% of the population represented in approving those changes. They want to make sure there's generally buy-in of those changes before they're modified. We discussed the proposed changes in June and didn't have any particular questions to forward on to them. So it would be my recommendation that you approve the amendment to the standards. The resolution that you'd be approving is in your packet, and then a copy of the resolution with redlined with those changes is included. And the standards are intended to be kind of a minimum level of service, so in most cases we would want to exceed that. Some standards are a little bit different than others, there may be a little bit less variation, but in general it's kind of a minimum level of service. So I don't have any concerns with adopting these. John?
Would it also be your recommendation then that we would as well sign on for this and approve this?
Correct.
Okay. Is that part of the motion we'd be making at this time?
By approving the resolution, you would be signing onto this. We may need to approve it. I'm not sure if we'll have to approve it again once we get the official approval by the Dane County Library Board. So I'm not sure if this would be our final conversation about it, or if after Dane County Library Board would review it after they hear from all the libraries. And so I'm not sure if this is sufficient or if we would have to do it again once they've voted to approve it.
Well, it looks both pretty standard but pretty complicated. And did you see any red flags in here at all?
I do not.
Okay, do you need a motion to approve?
Yes.
I'll do that.
Thank you, Jen. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in, or discussion? Let's forget, we can talk about it. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries, thank you. Final graphic wall design.
So in your packet, you see the Tycee wall designs that you saw at last month's meeting. We took feedback from a lot of different folks, including we got some suggestions from a variety of people. We got feedback from the building committee. We took the feedback from the building committee to the architect and reviewed that with the architect and the folks from Tycee, and kind of ended up where we are now is kind of the best effort to combine all the feedback in a way that works with the space. And so I guess our approval is needed to Tycee by the 21st, and so I would just ask that you approve it as a board, and so that there's somebody other than me saying that this looks good.
It's not just you.
So is there a motion to approve the final wall graphics?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, John.
I can second.
Give it to Carleen. Let her have it.
Thanks, Carleen. Is there any discussion? I think it looks
I think they're
amazing.
beautiful.
Me too.
I love
Yes,
them.
there's a lot of nodding heads in agreement, Carleen.
It's going to be awesome.
It is. It's good. I'm so excited. All in favor of approving the wall graphics?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you, everybody. We've got wall graphics. Moving on to the 2024 library budget request.
So this was discussed a little bit at the special meeting in August. We did submit your budget request to the village, and then Laura and I met with the village administrator and village finance director, and they met with all the different department heads and reviewed the different needs for the village overall. And they asked kind of each department to make a few concessions to try to make all the numbers kind of line up. They're still working on finalizing their numbers, but they did anticipate making some slight adjustments to the compensation plan recommendation that they had previously made, just to make sure the cost of implementation helps them align with where they need to be budget-wise. They also were supportive of the custodial position that we were talking about to split with the village, so that is something that they anticipate being presented to the village board, but did ask if we could work with them on funding the teen librarian position. We were talking about the different options for that. They did understand that was super important for us to have right when we open, The new library, just because we'll be busier and the way that we're organized will be very different. And so I'm worried that even that extra position won't be enough. But so what we kind of ended up with is we do have a fund balance the library board has discretion over. And since I started, we've approved once or twice using that fund balance if needed, but we haven't actually used any of the funds from that. The balance is at about $140,000. And the other thing we don't want to do is have fund balance seem to be accruing needlessly and seem like we're not utilizing funds. At some point, we'll come back when things slow down a little bit and we'll do a fund balance policy of our own just to kind of address how we want to handle that in the future, but currently we do not have one. What we talked about is a feasible option would be to use the fund balance to cover up to 6 months of that position. That would be roughly $41,000, assuming that that position took a family health insurance plan. If they were to not take health insurance or to take a single plan, that amount would be lower. And so I would leave that up to you to decide if we want that position to start and be available the full year like we talked about. We would need to figure out how to fund that, and my recommendation would be that we use up to 6 months, fund up to 6 months of that position from the fund balance, and that to go with the village's presentation of presenting, to fund the other half. It's also possible there's still unknowns in their budget, so at this point there's no guarantee that that will happen, but that's kind of what, they would hopefully be presenting to the village as part of our numbers. And
When you say that it's not for sure that will happen, are you saying that they might not need us to fund it, or that we might not even get?
So for context, the village board has not talked about the budget at all. So the village board has feedback and authority over making decisions about the village budget. So this conversation is just based on the conversation with the village finance director and administrator. And so we're just saying that we're willing, if the village funds the other 6 months, we would be willing to fund the 6 months to make it happen. But it has not even been presented to the village board yet. So there's been no conversation. So I just want to make sure it doesn't seem like we're promising something that hasn't been talked about in that arena.
Are we proposing that we do this, or are we saying like we would like this to be funded, and if that's not possible, then or are we going forward with the leading with we'll pay for 6 months? Sorry,
I would recommend that we go
confusing.
forward with we will pay for up to 6 months.
Okay.
If the village can unexpectedly fund more, it would be in their best interest to do that because it'll help the following year when they try to phase it in for a whole year. And our intent is that it would be a permanent position. However,
Sure.
I think us doing that in good faith shows how important it is. I think it's critical.
Yeah.
We could wait and not talk about it, but I think it'll help strengthen the support of that position by saying it's so important to us that we're willing to dedicate this to make it happen.
I trust the approach that you're taking. I guess I was trying to clarify for myself so that I understood what we were taking to them. I trust that, and I agree that I think this is very important, and I would rather that we get this position into the budget heading forward, however that looks. I appreciate the creativity approaching something that we all believe is pretty critical.
Jennifer, do you think this will impact the recruitment efforts to have a position that isn't fully funded within the village budget?
So I think we would have to wait to start recruitment until we get to a point where there's enough certainty that we can post it, and then post it in a way that is honest about the status so that individuals applying know kind of where we're at or can follow up with more information. I think that we will likely have to wait to interview folks until after the village board approves the budget, just so that we're not wasting people's time if it doesn't move forward. But having a commitment from you saying that you fund half of it will allow us to kind of get the ball rolling, have everything ready to go, so we can post it as soon as we're at a point that that they're comfortable with us doing so, knowing that where we're at. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but we also want to be able to, we really would like to have somebody start the day we open.
No, Tom, that makes perfect sense. I'm just thinking if I were someone looking for a new job, would I leave my job for a job that only had 1 year of funding? That's just,
Yeah.
I just wonder if it's going to impact us. I don't think we have a choice.
Yeah.
I think
And
we
there-
go
there-
forward no matter what.
The intent would be that in the past, when we've added new positions, we've often phased it in mid-year.
Oh, so this isn't unusual.
Yeah, oftentimes to reduce the impact on the village budget, positions might start like July 1st or March or whatever, and that allows them to kind of nudge it in, knowing that the next year it would be a priority to build it in for the future year.
Okay.
And so in the past, we've kind of typically approached that as at the beginning of the budget process is kind of assumed that that's part of the staffing costs moving forward. So it's not intended to be a limited term position, it's intended to be a permanent position.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's good.
I see what you're saying though.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the intention. I'm just wondering if it will impact our efforts. I don't think we have a choice.
Agreed.
So I think we move forward no matter what. There might be some people that you meet that are just so extraordinary that, we hope that we can give them enough assurance that this is a priority.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes, Carlene?
So I can't hear all the discussion, but I think what I'm hearing is that you'd like to move ahead based on the fund balance that the library has with trying to hire somebody so that they're in place when the library opens and not have to wait for the village board to make a decision. Is that accurate? Is that what I'm reading and hearing?
That's mostly accurate, except for that we want to respect the village's budget process. So we'd like to have everything in place so that once the village board does make a decision on their budget, that we can move forward at that point and have everything ready to go. So we would not post it without, we would not post it right now. We would wait. We're just committing to being willing to fund up to half of it so that when it gets presented to the village board, that we can say that we're kind of being good partners and making it happen, and that's so important to us. Does that make sense?
Got it. Yep, totally. I just wanted to make sure I was picking up on pieces of things and
Yeah.
wanted to make sure I was hearing
Yeah.
correctly. Thank you.
No, we definitely don't want to post a position we don't have permission to post or funding for, so,
I have a timeline question.
yes.
So, 3 things.
Yes.
When do we expect the village to have a budget? When do we expect to know when we can post this, right?
Yes.
And when do we want to start the interviewing process? I mean, maybe the posting and the interviewing goes together, but.
Yes, so the village board will approve their budget on Monday, November 21st, and if they don't at that point, they would have to schedule another special meeting right after that. Typically, they always approve it on that night.
Okay.
They post it for public notice a few weeks before that, so it has to go in the paper. And so they have a really good plan for it at that point. It doesn't mean they can't change it, but typically it's it's a balanced budget with very specific numbers and a lot of conversation that's gone into that first. I am meeting with the village administrator in October. There will also be conversation about how to handle other village positions, so we will wait. If we get Martin's support about posting it in advance, we would consider doing it at that time under his guidance. But it's possible we might need to wait. We would not, I don't think that we would schedule interviews until right around the time of that meeting, so that we would not want to make a candidate wait or waste their time, and so we would probably schedule interviews, shortly, as soon after that as humanly possible, so that we could make an offer and do the background check in time to have somebody start as soon as we could in the year.
So, if possible, like July or January 1, maybe?
I would like somebody to start yesterday if I could, but. If there's, because we've had those 4 open positions, if there's any flexibility to start them a week or 2 early so we could have them trained before the new year, that would be, at least start the training before the new year, that would be amazing. But at this point, we'll just be ecstatic to have the position approved.
Okay.
So
what kind of motion do you need at this point?
I have a recommended motion in the packet. So those are that was one of the changes. There were 2 other minor changes, and one is just to eliminate a $25 line item that hasn't been used since I've been here. And then the other one was just to change the revenue for temporary investments by $2,000 based on actual revenue has far exceeded what we had budgeted. So I guess I would recommend the motion include those changes to our budget request based on the conversation that Laura and I had with the
So you want them all lumped together or individually?
They can be all lumped together.
May I so move?
You may.
Thank you, John.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion?
Good job, Jennifer.
Yes.
It hasn't been presented to the village board yet. So
No,
this
but
is
it
just-
still
this is
takes a decent amount of financial creativity, and we appreciate that.
Just trying to be a good partner with the village, but also get what is really important to our
Yeah.
staff to operate properly, so.
I think we get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, all in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Thank you.
I,
Thank you. Opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you, everybody. The computer magic proposal for phone system. This sounds fun.
So we are just gonna be working with them. They need a down payment to order equipment, so we needed your approval in order to be able to place the equipment order. For the new library, we'll be adding a few workstations for staff, and they'll need telephones, and then also there's some new options as far as wireless options. A lot of times now, if staff need to call a vendor, they need to go in the telecom room or work on the self-checks, they have to use their personal phone devices, which I don't want them to have to do while they're working in the library building. It's more effective to have library phones than it is to pay for cell phone plans, for sure. So we are recommending those. We're also recommending the purchase of one of those conference phones that we would have available in the conference room at the new library, and then a simple phone that we would have available in the meeting room for like calling 911 if the room were to be available for after-hours use. And then we have a mobile headset that also plugs into the phones that staff could use if they're on the desk and answering phones throughout the day, or if they need to help a patron and go to the collection, they could wear that headset with their phone and go to the area. So we are looking to purchase those along with some required phone system items. Right now, our phone system is all networked through the police department because of the physical distance. There won't be the fiber connection that we have now, so there's some required phone server items as well. So I actually know the quantity of each of these if you want to hear it, but right now the recommended motion was just to allow us to purchase the required items, and then the optional items with the quantity to kind of be determined at my discretion, and then to allow us to prepay that. If you prefer to know amounts of those items, I have that now figured out, and I could tell you, but the pricing, did I put the pricing in there or not? I did put the pricing in there so you can see how much each phone is and each required item is.
So it's roughly 60,000 for the whole thing?
It'll probably be around 6,000 for the whole
Oh, I'm sorry.
thing, yeah.
What is this 60,000?
That's how much you put in the budget, just to kind of.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, so there's a whole line item, I should have started there. There's a whole line item in our project budget for technology-related things.
Okay.
And the phone system is one element that falls into that overhead category.
Oh, okay.
So far we bought wireless access points and self-check units from that. And so there's plenty of funds available, so this is kind of the next priority item. And then there's some wish list items at the bottom. If we still have funding at the end, then we'll go back and look at those, but this is kind of a high priority item.
So it'll be all nothing's hardwired, it's all wireless, it's all Wi-Fi?
No, there will be, all our phones from the system phones will be hardwired.
Okay.
But we'll add there's some headsets that we can plug in to give flexibility for people to be mobile, and we're gonna add 2 cordless phones, one for each floor, so that staff needing to move around will have that option as well.
So mostly hardware.
Mostly hardwired,
Okay.
yes, yeah.
I like that better, I'm just old school that way.
Yeah, and part of the reason is because that's what we have now, and it fits with the village's phone system, so we can call a different department by extension, and it also it matches what we already have without having to replace those, so it just, what our staff is already used to.
And they're more dependable.
Yeah, no, they're great, they're really functional, so we like them.
Yep, I agree.
So I don't know if you want quantities, or if you just want to make that motion to let us figure out the number. I can give you quantities either way, whatever you prefer.
I'm comfortable making the motion that you use my as. Okay, there's a motion in here, and I'd like to make that one. How's that?
The recommended motion?
The recommended motion. I can't use my own words here.
So to clarify, we're going to approve the purchase from Computer Magic of the required phone system items at the discretion of the library director.
I will second that.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor of approving Computer Magic?
I love some computer magic.
Opposed? All right.
Just.
We have a phone system.
It's
Chugging right
magic.
along.
Magic. It is apparently.
Purchase of miscellaneous computer IT and FFE items.
So far, most of our purchases have been large dollar amounts and pretty detailed agreements for services like furniture or construction services or commissioning or things like that. We are starting to get into the part of the budget where we have a lot of smaller items that to have you approve every single smaller item. You know, we kind of would prefer for it to work a little bit more like the library budget where we set a budget for that item and then we can just purchase things from within that. We kind of probably can already do that within these accounts because you've already approved the budget for these, but I just like to be very formal and transparent about that. So the two particular agenda items or budget line items are the computer IT, and I've kind of described what things are expected to come out of those budgets. And we'll kind of prioritize within those to see how far the dollars go. And then the other line item is the furniture, fixture, and equipment. We will probably be bringing back hopefully the furniture or the patio furniture order in October. But then after that, we're going to be getting into some smaller things. The two categories that are probably going to be the most expensive is some items for the children's play area. So we're going to have a lot of fun, interactive things for the kids to do. And then we're also working on amenities for the sensory room. And so those we kind of have a placeholder amount for those items. And then we're going to have things like book carts and mailboxes and rugs and floor mats and all sorts of weird little things. And so we just prefer for that to be something that we can purchase without having to ask you to buy it. I don't know, this floor mat and that rug or whatever. So if that's something you're comfortable with, I have a recommended motion there. I also have the budget numbers for both of those line items there, and basically the recommendation would just allow us to spend within the budget amount, and so if we got to a point where the budget amount was used, then we would have to come back before any further purchases were made.
And these are one-time expenses.
One-time expenses, yeah.
May I authorize the recommended motion?
Yes, thank you, John. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Laura. Any discussion? All in favor of authorizing the purchases for computer and IT and miscellaneous?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry, Carlene. All right, motion carries. Thanks, everybody. Proposal for High Tower True Love seating.
And this might be the weirdest motion you've ever heard.
I make a motion for true love.
I want the true love seating.
So we are working on selecting patio furniture, but we do have a donor that sponsored that area who's very interested in looking at that. So I would very much like to share what we're selecting with that donor because I'd like them to not hate it. But of course, the selection of those items is up to the library, so we will make sure those are good quality items. But if we're picking between two wonderful things, then I'd like them to not hate the thing that we choose. So one of the items though is discontinued and they have limited quantities and limited colors. So I wanted to have you pre-authorize purchase of that item so that if we choose to select it, that we can go ahead and purchase it before they run out. And then if for some reason it doesn't make our final selection, then we will just not execute this contract.
Okay.
I know that's really bizarre.
I don't think that's bizarre. I think that's just
Trying to get stuff done.
Are you
we only meet
setting
once
it?
a month.
They have indoor ones. I've sat in an indoor one. I haven't
Yeah.
sat in the outdoor ones.
Is it comfortable?
Yes.
She was very excited about these chairs.
And they look adorable.
They
So
come in
what
very
excites
bright
you
colors.
about these chairs?
They're for the kids. So
Yeah,
they
yeah.
go by the kids area.
Okay, and?
They're fun for the kids. They have an area for water drainage. Kids really like them. I'm pretty boring, so I would pick really boring things. This is fun for the kids.
Okay.
I like the water runoff. That
too.
seems
Yeah.
so good
Help them
because
stay clean.
they're gonna get snow on them. They're gonna melt. Then you don't want a puddle. This looks awesome.
And they're gonna be gone soon.
Yeah.
Let's snap them up.
So, I'll make the motion to approve the EBI quote for outside seating items.
I will second it.
Thank you. Any discussion?
You gotta see true love in there somewhere.
I have a question about how heavy they are and how how they will be secured outside.
Oh, sure.
Good question.
They are, where's the lead? They have the measurements. I don't know about security, Carlene, I haven't thought about that. I have the measurements, but I don't have the weights. I should point out that they are eco-friendly. I think they're made from a recycled material. They are weather condition resistant. But I do not know about how we'll secure them. Most likely we would just have them out seasonally and bring them inside or into a storage area for the season. But that's a hard one for the library patio. It'll be in back, so it won't necessarily be visible from, you know, the street. But we also want something that's flexible, so we have a performer or something there that we can move things around. So we don't necessarily want things that are bolted down. So that's going to be a tricky thing.
Yeah,
We'll also
so
have a
they're
camera.
pretty easy to move so that if you needed to bring them inside,
Yeah.
if it seemed like it was gonna be an issue, you could do that.
Yeah, I believe we'll also have a security camera outside, which will help. So if somebody did mess with something, we'd have video footage of it available as well. But
It would be hard to put on your patio since you would recognize them.
If you live in town, it would
They're
be.
slightly distinct.
It'd just be like putting up the Mona
Can't hide
Lisa.
them.
Sorry.
It'll be obvious where they came from.
All right, so all in favor of buying or moving forward through Love Seating?
Aye. You got it in
I got
there.
it in. Yes. Opposed? All right, thanks, everybody. Moving on to regular meeting date and time.
So we have one trustee who has a conflict on Wednesday nights moving forward for the school year, and just wanted to take that opportunity to revisit our regular meeting date and time. If we were to move the meeting to 5:30, that would address that conflict for that trustee. And if we choose to stay with the current time, they would likely just be a slight bit late for the meetings for a little while.
For the foreseeable
Um,
future, actually.
That's actually kind of an issue for me because the second Wednesday of the month, I'm on the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign Board and they meet at 7. Or, no, at 6. So it's right after this. Like, I'm going from this to that. So I can't meet a whole lot later
Okay.
than, let me just check that for sure. Yeah, they meet at 6 to 7:30.
So possibly as a compromise, maybe 5:15?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I tried to change my meeting from my end and I was not able to do so. So it's an appointment for one of my kids that's not movable.
As long as you put all the important stuff at the beginning, and
I'll just
I'll
be late.
stay as long as I can and be late for the other one. That works for me too.
Do we need like a motion then, Jennifer?
If we want to make an adjustment, we would need a motion, and then if there's a particular time frame, that if we wanted to revisit it, I don't know if revisiting it, next summer would be good, or what time frame. If we did need to move it to a different time to better accommodate everybody's schedule then, but we could also just play it by ear and see how it's working for Carlene and Laura and everybody else.
For the school year maybe, and then at the school year we can kind of touch
Yeah.
base again, would that make sense?
Yeah, we could try 5:15.
5:15?
Yeah, I would just, well, you saw what time I walked in.
Yeah.
So that's when I can get here, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, 5:15 would be better than 5 for me.
Perfect.
So another thing too is if we have a particularly long meeting with a lot of action items, we could look at reordering the agenda to move the information items later if we thought it would go longer. Because I don't want Carlene to miss, we had moved it up because a lot of times that provides context for some of our discussion. But if that would help make sure Carlene was here for everything, we could look at the order of the agenda again as well.
Perhaps do a few.
Yeah, and I can check in with them as well and see, if they can start later. And one of the things is it's a larger board, and so that could be more of an issue for them than for us.
I think we're kind of getting back to the point where we might be able to achieve a meeting in an hour most of the
I hope
time,
so.
since we're past a lot of the complicated discussions. So I'm pretty hopeful that moving forward, our meetings will be more in the realm of 45 minutes to an hour anyway. Because I think we're going to be wrapping up shortly, and it's about 5:40 right now. So that might be a middle ground where everybody can actually be at most of the meeting, and maybe we just look at changing the information items around so if somebody did have to leave early, they wouldn't miss as much or would be able to read the packet to get that information.
So I'll make a motion that we move to 5:15 going forward and revisit at the end of the school year.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I totally will second that.
Thank you, John.
Thank
Any discussion?
I would like to mention that I think it's important that we respect each of our board members and do what we can to include them because it's important. And I think that, you know, by setting this standard, we're showing that we are leaders in our community. So that's my comment.
Thanks, John.
So Carleen, I don't want you to try to change anything. Why don't we just try next month and see how it goes, and then we can talk about it after that.
Okay. Yeah, and I'll just try to be as flexible as I can. I don't think it's as big a deal if I'm late to the other one as not being in this one, so it is a larger board.
You just don't want to make
There's a
something,
lot of presentation that happens at the beginning that I can read about.
yeah, we just want to make sure we get to a place that works for everybody and doesn't inconvenience you more or anything either, so. But I think we can make it pretty good for everybody.
So, all in favor of moving our meeting to 5:15?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right, thanks, everybody. Let's see, moving on to closing and future agendas. Next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, October 11th
At 5:15?
at 5:15. Is there a request for any future agenda items? Wait, did we skip one? Oh, we
did that one
moved
early.
it, sorry. Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Jinx.
Second. I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Carly. Thank you.